university to try and get them to cut their ties with institutions of the Zionist entity.
Hi, thank you for having me, Mimi. My name is Harry. I, until recently, was assistant professor at Radboud University Nijmegen. I was very outspoken in support of Palestine, also organizing a lot with the students and staff in Nijmegen. But yes, recently was forced to leave the university over my statements about Palestine. I'm very happy to be here and talk about the universities.
Yes, I'm Amel. Thank you for having me as well. And I'm also a student at Utrecht University, actually, and I work for the municipality for a political party where we have tried since way before the 7th of October, actually, to boycott, quotation marks, Israel. I'm happy to talk about that today.
Yes, and thank you all for also introducing the quotation marks. And thank you for mentioning that this movement started way before the start of genocide. I want to start with a short recap of why the call to boycott Israeli universities has been sounding since 2008, and why it's important that all universities and Dutch universities cut all of their ties with Israeli institutions. From Omar Barouti, Palestinian activist and co-founder of the BDS and PACB movement, to Maya Wind, Israeli scholar and author of Towers of Ivory and Steel, we can quickly summarize the following. Israeli institutions are, first of all, strategically built on stolen land by an illegitimate state. These institutions are responsible for the illegal occupation of Palestinian land and the suppression of the Palestinian people. These institutions are the ones designing and implementing the current genocide and are complicit in massacres of the Palestinian people for the past 76 years. From digital surveillance and espionage of the people of Palestine, such as in Gaza and in the West Bank, to policies like the Hannibal Directive, which is an Israeli army operational order first introduced in 1986, to the destruction of Palestinian agriculture, to the design and implementation of the current genocide by, for example, manufacturing and so-called testing weapons of mass destruction and the training of members of the Havat Zalot in Israeli occupation forces on military sites on campus. All these nodes that make the current Israeli state possible happen within these institutions. And Lilith, you're an alumni from Utrecht University. Can you tell me a bit more about what the university's complicity looks like?
Absolutely. So Utrecht University maintains 10 ties directly with Israeli institutions. So 9 of these are with Israeli academic institutions. So these are universities such as Hebrew University of Jerusalem, Reichman University, Technion, more, 9 of them, plus an additional research tie that is directly with an Israeli ministry, and also through the Utrecht Medical Center, which is connected and in part responsible to the university, a further 11 ties, right? So these ties are important to understand that are both institutional ties, which they have paused after years and years of pushing and work being done towards that by students, staff, and allies throughout the city, but also, moreover, research ties. And the university will often defend these research ties with the claim, oh, this is just research, it's neutral. But what's important to know is that these research ties allow, normalize, and work with and collaborate with these institutions. Why, you went into it a bit, why these institutions are so fundamentally dangerous and designed to damage Palestinian lives. Firstly, it's because these universities are on stolen land, right? Whether they are in what the world calls settlements in the West Bank, or within what is understood as Israel proper, they're on stolen land. For example, Hebrew University of Jerusalem is built on land that was stolen in 1948, and also is used by the military for snipers' outposts over East Jerusalem, which is still under occupation at the same time, right? So every time that our university engages in research with these universities, every time it collaborates with these universities, it is accepting and normalizing these forms of violence over the Palestinian people in a way that students, staff, everyone should not be able to accept.
Yes, and for example, Reichman University, which you just mentioned, is a private Israeli company that has ties with Israel's largest weapons producer, Elbit Systems. Utrecht University also, for example, has ties with Tel Aviv University, which collaborates with the security state and military industry for developing technologies to be used by the Israeli military and international export. If you want to know if your institution has any ties with Israeli institutions, you can go to academiccomplicity.nl. There you can find a map of the Netherlands and the academic institutions that are based here, and you can click on them and see what other quote-unquote Israeli universities or academic institutions your institution has ties with. And as you just mentioned, Lilith, you've been active the past year, 2 years, the past decade period of time. And listening to what you described, it's not weird. It's not out of very weird reason to ask your university to cut ties with these institutions that are complicit in genocide, that are built on stolen land, and that are illegitimate. What have we seen from the university as a response the past 2 years?
Well, it's been quite clear. The university is not willing to listen to its students or its staff or anyone, actually. I think one of the main drivers beyond solidarity with the Palestinian people of student activism is the fact that we have no say in our university. The university is not a democratic institution. It is an institution run by the College van Bestuur, which is 3-4 people who make almost all decisions, right? And so when students have been protesting, and I'll go into the forms that protest takes, it is very simply to have a say in how our university functions, and to say that our university should not be allowed to make these decisions that so fundamentally are tied to the oppression of the Palestinian people without first talking to their own students about this. And so what has the form of the student activism taken? Well, I mean, as you said, it's been going on longer than I've been a student there, that you are a student there. It's been a long process, but really since October 7th, it has escalated. And that escalation took the major form in May 7th, 2024, when the first encampment in Utrecht, student encampment, took place. This was 1 day after Amsterdam because they had to be faster than us, and also echoed a global call in Colombia, all over the world. And we put up an encampment, said, okay, we're here to demand our university cuts its ties, and we were met very quickly with police batons, kicked out, brutalized. But then we came back because we knew it would not stop there, and we knew it was so much bigger than us, so much bigger than what riot police could tell us it is. And so for the past 2 years since that time, we have continued to encamp, to occupy. We've blockaded the administrative centers of the university. We have done everything that we can to demand that our university puts an academic embargo in place.
And if we, for example, look at Henk Kummeling, Anton Pijpers, what have their responses been?
Yeah. So Henk Kummeling and Anton Pijpers are both former now members of the CVB, who would quite simply call the riot police without communicating with us, right? And so rather than engaging with us, they would always resort to employing police violence to end any form of student activism. They've now left, which I think the students are grateful for. I think the faculty is also grateful for, because Anton Pijpers, alongside brutalizing his students, also embezzled over 100,000 euros from the university. So not a great guy. But in general, even with the new members of the CVB, there's been a lack of engagement with students. This at the same time as engaging with Zionist students, right? And students who, for some reason, have a greater call to meet with them. They've been very willing to engage with. But with us and with our cause, they refused to meet with us. Occasionally, Anton Pipers would come down when we had an occupation and tell us to leave, but not actually engage with us.
With this little megaphone?
With a megaphone, and refuse to actually have a conversation with us and talk to us about our demands and about why it's morally right for our university to do this. Instead, he would just tell us to leave and then walk away, and 5 minutes later come back with armed police.
Universities don't listen, and they just decide to beat up their students, which is something we've unfortunately seen the past 2 years, again and again. And how has the Utrecht municipality responded? Because they also have a role in like the triangle of decision making.
I think it's been quite a journey how the municipality has responded. I think you can see that clearly now as well with the recent developments. But in the beginning, it was mostly very escalating, the same way that the university board was, and there was no room for discussion there. It's a very much a conversation on like respectability politics, I feel like, on like the right order of things. This is not how you bring up a problem. This is not how you go about things. This is not the way we do things. I think that was very much the attitude the municipality had towards these protests. Like, yes, we understand there's a lot of emotion. That's what they keep bringing up. There's a lot of emotions. People are feeling a lot of things. But the response to it is not proportional. That's basically what they said a lot. And then they would send the police. Because the municipality mostly has a power, like the mayor specifically, obviously has the power to send the armed forces and also to employ dogs or to employ horses, what kind of gear they're wearing. So she has to tell them what level of armed police they have to arrive in, and if there's going to be like Romeos. So in English, I guess that's undercover agents, less
or
nice
plain clothes, I'm hearing.
Plain clothes, okay, plain clothes. And we've tried from within the municipality, so I'm part of a political party in the municipality of Ain, and we've tried to, via multiple ways, to do something about the way the municipality approaches this. So, for example, we tried to ban undercover police, because you can actually ban them, you cannot allow them in. We tried to, Partij voor de Dieren tried to ban the use of dogs, like all these type of things, but everything was voted against and was pushed away. And I think the way the municipality has changed with regards to the response to the protests is, I think this year, we submitted a proposal about calling the situation in Palestine what it is, so a genocide, which got approved, like it got voted through, which was really, really good news and such a big change because the left-wing parties were finally ready to admit this was what was going on. And I think that meant a change in the way the municipality responded to the student protests as well, in the sense that they couldn't justify like the harsh response anymore, but they still did, which was interesting. But you can see now with the encampments and occupations that have happened now that they're starting to buffer a little bit in the way they respond because they can't justify it anymore. But what we saw in May this year was that for the first time ever, the mayor also said this was not the way I instructed the police to respond. And that was really big news. Then she apologized for that when the police got mad, and she threw our council member under the bus and was like, yeah, also council members need to behave, because as a council member you're allowed to witness a protest, you're allowed to be in the police lines. And she basically blamed the council members that were in the police lines for siding with them, the protesters, as if there's ever neutrality in politics. Because it's politics. But yeah, that is basically the response.
Which is a crazy response. So Sharon Dijksma?
Yeah, Sharon Dijksma. Yeah.
She goes from sorry for beating you up, and then she goes to, but sorry to the police for criticizing your violent behavior towards students that are doing what is actually within their rights. Mm-hmm. So protesting rights also covers encampments, also covers occupation. So maybe a good refresher of our basic rights for them should be.
Yeah, but even those facts they're not aware of. Like in debates, you notice it always. And I think it's interesting that as well to see how the university, for example, subsidizes student associations, which are very violent, very problematic, but then evicts very peaceful occupations and encampments where basically there's like a microcosm of the world you would want to see. It's an interesting, different response to things.
And I think it's been very valuable for the student movement to have this shift that happened within the municipality, because particularly in the moment that the municipality declared it a genocide alongside, the UN, everyone else, it was another talking point that we could bring to the university of saying, you are a university of this city. If you're not going to listen to Amnesty International, if you're not going to listen to Palestinians, firstly, or the UN, at least listen to the city that you belong to. And that was very valuable to us, and that has helped us move forward. And this also brings in some of the recent developments of what's happened within Utrecht University and within Utrecht University encampment, which is that they have shifted their playbook, right? They have shifted away from immediately using violence. And this is because the municipality and the decision makers within the municipality have taken that away from them, right? On the 2nd of December, we occupied one of our buildings and we renamed it after Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, who is a Palestinian doctor from Gaza who has been abducted and held for nearly a year now by the Zionist entity. And we managed to hold this occupation for 12 days within a university building as the students of the university, but to say you can't continue with having business as usual while this genocide is taking place. So we're going to be here as a reminder, as a space for anyone to join us and to come with us to learn in a different manner than your standard measures. But if you want to continue having business as usual, you can't do it here in this building. The students are going to prevent that. And the university tried immediately to do what they've always done, of send the police in. But the public prosecutor refused and said, we've done this again and again and again, and it hasn't worked. So you need to sort this out with your students, which you would hope would make them come and talk to us. That didn't happen. Instead of wanting to engage with us and wanting to really explain to us, okay, why they refused to change their ties, to cut their ties, what they instead did is, because the criminal law was no longer on their side, they decided to charge us under civil law. They started a lawsuit against us, and they said, if you don't leave by this time, we will take you to court, which was not something we had prepared for, but it's something that we will now prepare for. And they refused to meet with us, even after agreeing with us that they would meet with us now, after the occupation ended. But until that time, we will be back. And if they can't use the civil criminal law, and they want to use civil law, we'll be prepared for that.
Yeah, because they wanted to put it under kraken, right? Like the, what's kraken in English?
Squatting.
Like squatting. But what I liked about the statement of the students as well was the quote of, we'd rather spend our money on fundraisers than on court money. Yeah. I thought that was very powerful as well to say, and to be like, we realize that we wouldn't even be here if you weren't complicit in genocide. Like, you keep pointing blame at anyone but yourself. But I think what's interesting, what the university is doing a bit now as well, but which I recognize from the municipality, is like this strategy of delay. We, in October 2023, we asked questions about how to boycott all quote-unquote Israeli institutions gemeente Utrecht is aligned with, and they were like, yeah, no, both sides have it really bad, and we're not aware of any ties, and we're not going to research them. And that's been like, now obviously we've come full circle where people have been telling them this is what's happening, cut the ties, and now they're cutting ties with all the main building institutions within quote-unquote Israel. But I think the university is kind of doing the same, they're delaying in order to moralize themselves again. Like, they need the time to figure out, like, how can we moralize ourselves this time without actually ever taking seriously our students. I think, and I think it's interesting to see that a lot of people within the municipality are also never responding to the protest until something is broken or something is stolen or whatever. And it's like, it's very interesting. People are crying over that and not crying over the people in Palestine. So it's
they rather cry over material small material things like broken windows or maybe some paint, rather than acknowledge that they are complicit in a fucking genocide.
Yeah.
Excuse my language.
And I think there was a recent op-ed in the university newspaper that put it really nicely of why it's a privilege to be able to have a building being occupied and unable to do it. It's a privilege to have a building that you're unable to use because your students are using it. In Gaza, there are no universities. There are no university buildings. People are trying to learn in any way that they can. And for our university to shame us because they had to move students around, they had the space. They can have classes online. They have the infrastructure to make learning possible. But they complain about us for no reason while not recognizing the immense privilege that they have. I think I wanted to add another point about the university moralizing itself. At the beginning of this year, our new rector, Wilco Geeseleger, announced that a boycott was in place, right? Because one of their exchange ties was cut because they couldn't fulfill it because of travel restrictions, which is firstly a lie to try and prevent us from continuing, but is more so, I think, just an incredibly rude appropriation of a word that means so much and a word of resistance that has so much meaning. To say that a boycott is in place while you continue to have these ties is so demeaning to the Palestinians who've called for it for so long. And I think it was an attempt to moralize themselves, to say, no, we have done this. Look at us, we're so good, we're ahead of all of our other colleagues in the other universities. We are having a boycott in place. When all it did was show just how willing they are to lie and debase themselves and to take over what is the rightful moral position, which they recognize is to have this boycott in place, but without actually putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think this is really right. I think from the very beginning, what we've seen with the CVP's is that they basically just want to try to delay as much as possible. And the ways in which they do that is try to make it seem that they are doing something, whether it's forming a human rights commission to assess ties, or whether it's suspending the 2 student exchange agreements. And so one part of their strategy is to try to kind of dissipate the movement through making it look like they've kind of actually listened and done something. And then the other part of the strategy, as you've talked about before, is where they criminalize the students. They've put so much effort into making the students look like criminals, basically. I remember this crazy case at Radboud back in May when the student was bitten by the dog on the campus. Within 15 minutes or something of this happening, or maybe an hour or something, the CVP released a statement saying that students had been violent against security, and one of them had bitten security on the hand, basically making it look like students were like animals. And this was all lies. And again, it just demonstrates that they were very happy to believe the words of security without any checking of evidence or fact, and put that out there because they know it's a narrative struggle. And they also know, to be honest, that most of the people in the universities are actually kind of on their side, right? In terms of viewing this kind of activism in a kind of as something not good or something, not the right way of expressing yourself. I experienced this a lot, where I had to defend the students to colleagues who kind of felt they were going too far in something. You're trying to remind them that, hey, they're protesting some of the the most extreme violence ever, and you're worried about, kind of disruption of a facility. It didn't make any sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and what we see is that the call for boycotts is not only students, but it's just it's throughout the university. You see, for example, administrative colleagues that refuse to do their work, or not their work, but what is asked of them when it is about students and criminalizing them. And one part that we shouldn't forget in the student movement is that we have staff also with us, and that staff is also in the ways that they're able to standing up against the institution they work in. And Harry, you've been on the receiving end of this situation. Can you tell me a bit about your experience at Radboud University?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So yeah, I mean, my journey in this started in, I was in Lebanon on October 7th, and for a few weeks after, I do research in Lebanon, and very exposed to the kind of very contrasting emotional reactions among Palestinians and Lebanese to what was happening here. You know, the celebration that happened when Palestinians broke out of their prison on October 7th, but then also the despair when the genocide started. And then coming back here to kind of absolute silence and awkwardness of all the staff in the departments and the university, and then kind of with a few colleagues wanting to try to start speaking out about that. And that started with trying to organize seminars with colleagues to try to teach kind of the history of the Palestinian struggle and the history of settler colonialism and the Zionist project, and wanting to kind of rewrite some of the wrongs that were all over the media and that was even made very difficult. You know, like I think there's so many stories in the universities of staff wanting to organize seminars, invite certain speakers, especially Palestinian speakers, that then get banned and disallowed because they're going to create an unsafe environment or they're too polarizing. All sorts of kind of checks and balances and processes that are put in place in order to make it as difficult as possible to organize any events that want to speak about Palestine. So we experienced that from the very beginning. And then, you know, of course, then we started kind of helping out with the students as well. But for me, yeah, the struggle became a much more public struggle because for some reason or another, it wasn't really planned. I started making posts on X that I had an account on, and this was firstly, most of my posts were about protests, to be honest, about the encampment in Amsterdam or protests in Amsterdam, then in Nijmegen. But then it turned also into kind of statements and opinions and expressions of anger and feelings, you know, and I think, you know, that like X is a platform where it is very, like there's a lot of Zionists on X, as we all know. There's a lot, like it's very right wing and become kind of fascist as a platform, of course. So then my post started getting a lot of traction among the Dutch right wing and the Dutch Zionists, kind of Zionist lobbies like CD and their journalists that work for the Telegraaf and the politicians, and they started then kind of focusing on my statements and then complaining to the university, basically. And then basically for the first time, the first one that blew up was a post where I said, can I swear on here? I don't know. Where I said, fuck Israel, fuck all those who normalize or support Israel, and the only solution is its complete dismantlement, which I was quite proud of as a tweet. And it came after like lots of kids were just killed again by Israel during one of the so-called ceasefires. And basically this student who happens to be a member of the VVD, and also has quite close ties with CD, then made a kind of public complaint about me, like on X, and then the university called me for a meeting, basically. And even at that time, they were like, yeah, we're a bit concerned about this language you're using. Like, we looked up what the word dismantlement means, but then we think that's okay, actually. Like, but you can't swear in public, like, you know, like, and even
on your own X platform.
Yeah, on my own X platform,
account.
which is my opinion. Like, you know, it's about my opinions. Of course, I'm not speaking as an employee or as a lecturer there. You know, and I remember they even said, like, you know, in Britain, aren't you supposed to be quite polite, like in how you express yourself? Do you really use that kind of language? And I was really really shocked. Anyway, but then I kind of said, okay, yeah, I was emotional. Like I will try not to say that again, but I wouldn't make any promises. I started getting support from the European Legal Support Center straight away, also because I was a bit kind of like, this doesn't feel right.
Bless them.
Bless them indeed, yeah. If anybody is having issues with their employer, please reach out to the European Legal Support Center. They are so good, and they really helped me, and I know many others try to resist the kind of repression that they were facing in their workplaces. But yeah, so like this was the start of a journey where they basically called me in once every month or two, basically, for a new post that was always like kind of repressed, like cutting the boundaries more and more. Like it then got to posts where I was saying Zionism is similar to Nazism, or Israel shouldn't exist as a state, or lots of other examples, like where they were basically suddenly saying, oh, we have a problem with this and you can't say these kinds of things, without explaining to me why or giving me any reasoning, and forcing me to defend myself, like why they fit within the code of conduct, without ever having to explain, basically. And it was just so clear that this was really responding to the public campaign that was ramping up against me. I got 6 articles earlier this year written about me in the Telegraaf, or I had politicians from the PVV and then the BBB complaining about me in Parliament. Then CD, of course, all the time making statements and filing charges against me, which went nowhere. So it was this kind of creation of a atmosphere in which I was made to kind of be, again, kind of like a criminal or doing something wrong.
It sounds quite intimidating also.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think the witch hunt, of course, like this is a common Zionist tactic. Obviously, they do this all the time, and they've been doing it for decades, as many of us know, like, and especially against Palestinians who dare to speak out. And it works as a tactic, and that's why they do it. They have a lot of resources, and they go after individuals, and then make them, they basically like try to intimidate those individuals through threats and abuse, getting them in trouble with their employer, so that they're going to shut up, basically.
And when did it escalate in your situation?
Yeah, it was really, October was the most intense month, for sure, because I started making statements about October 7th and Hamas, and that was something that firstly the media and the politicians really did not like, and that was also something my university did not like. And then they basically gave me an ultimatum, because basically they'd wanted me to back down for many months, and I'd refused. Again, with support from ELSC and a lawyer, which was amazing, and lots of friends and colleagues and students. But then they basically gave me an ultimatum and said, you either need to change how you're posting, or you need to leave the university. And we either do that through making a settlement to agree for you to leave, or we take you to court. So it was just very clear that they gave me no choice, basically. And I basically told them I'm not gonna change the way I'm posting, because I'm not doing anything wrong. Like, I think it's really important to kind of push the boundaries around what is acceptable speech, because Zionists want to close those boundaries. They want to make it more and more criminalized what you can actually say. And we see this in the UK right now, for example, with the word intifada now being basically criminalized and leading to arrest, even though it's not illegal in any way. It's just an intimidation tactic. And the reason they want to do that is they want to slowly make it impossible to express any support for Palestine. And I have no doubts that they will try to come after more statements. They will try to make it illegal at some point to even say free Palestine. I'm very sure of it. And that's why it's so important for us to kind of try to push back and hold firm on the boundaries that we believe are right, because they will just come after more.
And also even criminalizing language that is that is clearly showing what is happening.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that I think it's interesting that they have this idea of like the purity of institutions very much as well. Like they, in the municipality, they find it very hard that bijeen knows the protesters and knows the people, that we wear a keffiyeh, that we say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. All of that, they're always like, but we have to be neutral, but we're there as political parties. Political parties are never neutral. It doesn't make sense. And we can be a party that like we participate in the protest, we know the protesters, we will say hi when we're at a protest and we see people, and that's allowed. But they're not ready to deal with that. And just in the university, they're not ready to deal with a teacher who is also pro-Palestine and also protesting. I feel like they want to have this idea of the neutrality of institutions because they want to keep the status quo, obviously. But I think it's interesting, just remind me of what you said. For instance, the police, the mayor saw me on a video of the police protesting, and then I had to come to have a conversation with her as if she has anything to say about what I do in my free time. I'm not working for her, I'm working for bijeen, I'm not working for her. So it's a very interesting, they always try to keep this purity of institutions, which I think obviously doesn't exist, and they've never been pure before. They're classist, racist institutions anyways.
Yeah, I find that so crazy that you can be asking people who work for a political party to be neutral. Like, the whole point of a political party is the complete opposite of that.
Yeah. And I think this also goes into academia, which they talk about academic neutrality. One of the core ways that they push back against us attempting to force them to boycott is that they want academic neutrality. As if, firstly, having ties with one side is neutrality in the first place, which of course it's not, but also because academic neutrality isn't a thing. It's not a word that exists. It's an idea that was created in the 1960s in America to push back against student protests at that time, and has no real meaning, because of course any sort of academia, any sort of knowledge production that you're doing comes with politics and comes with understandings and meanings and associations with the world that can never be abstracted and made into pure neutrality, even if it is in the most scientific and like in a space that's purely scientific. It is always done with understandings and with politics in that. And I wanted to add on how the university is pushing back against lecturers and criminalizing speech. During our last occupation, a group of lecturers from UU wrote an email very politely, not as themselves, but as a coalition of lecturers, not demanding anything, but asking them just to meet with us, because they'd spent a week, 10 days, not just ignoring that we were there. And because of this, they've been reprimanded and told to come into a meeting for simply asking the university, Save Bay, to meet with students who are protesting, which, I think is just unbelievable that they can't even, as a collective, ask for discussion to happen at their university.
Yeah, I think it's getting worse. Honestly, the kind of attempt and obsession with control of the narrative and control of people's actions is getting worse and worse. And I think that's just a sign that they are losing the narrative. And they know they've lost the narrative. They know that more people than ever are questioning Zionism as an ideology and Zionism as a project. More and more people are questioning the role of our own institutions in upholding Zionism and colonialism in so many ways. And so the response to that is to repress. We had the same thing in Radboud. Like, a few lecturers, amazing colleagues of mine, wrote a letter defending me and attacking the institution for the kind of fascistic way that it got rid of me, basically, over speech. And they are facing a lot of problems, these lecturers themselves now, with the university for doing a letter in support of a lecturer who was fired. It's really insane.
That is absolutely insane. It reminds me also of the other silly argument that universities use when they say, oh, but academic freedom of Israeli, quote unquote, Israeli institutions, when we're talking about like maybe some benefits that these academics could have Omar Barouti actually very nicely in one of his talks explains that this does not stand in the way of academic freedom. Institutions can publish whatever the F they want, and it does not depend on a Dutch university to legitimize them or whatever by having a tie with them.
I think also, at the same time as universities are calling for the need for academic freedom in their association with Israeli institutions, they're clamping down on their own academic freedom of their own lecturers and teachers. We have lecturers at the UU who, because of rules that have been put in place about who they can lecture to on this topic, can't do their own research because their research is on this topic. They can't educate their students because of what the university has put into place. This is not a defense of academic freedom, because academic freedom, they would allow their lecturers to teach and to speak and to be people outside of these classes, while also allowing them to do what they need to do in these classes. It's instead just a defense of empire, plain and simple.
Yeah.
And it's also always academic freedom at the expense of who? Like, it's always wanting certain rights, but at the expense of who? Like, it's the same with like having like a female CEO of Shell, right? Like, you're still killing the same amount of women somewhere else. Like, it's like, I feel like it's that similar logic for universities now, that they're talking about freedom and at the expense of Palestinians through Horizon and all these projects. Like, I think it's always interesting that they leave a part of that sentence when they make their statements.
Yeah, they worry about academic freedom of the oppressor, but what about the academic freedom in all the institutions that have been destroyed in Gaza? Academic freedom of Palestinians to just do their work, students to just study, live their lives.
Can I just say another thing about this academic freedom thing, actually? Like, because it's been a big conversation also among the staff, right? Like, and maybe among the students as well. But like, I think I really try not to make an argument where I'm like, we need to defend academic freedom as a principle. But like, that's because like, the truth is, I was part of protests of Zionist speakers who came to campus, right? Like, and I wouldn't want Zionists, like people promoting Zionism, to be platformed at the university. And I think that is perfectly legitimate argument to make, because Zionism is similar to Nazism. It's a racist ideology. It's a settler colonial ideology. It shouldn't be promoted at a university. It's the same as someone coming to promote South African apartheid at a university. We wouldn't accept that. So I just think it's dangerous sometimes to kind of, from our side, to kind of like make these arguments about abstract notions like academic freedom without actually kind of engaging in the specifics of what is and isn't kind of acceptable.
Yeah. Thank you all. I'm gonna try to round up. We talked a little bit about the past 2 years of student encampments and what it looked like, about how universities just look away and hope that students will eventually stop, that staff will stop. We talked about how municipalities also contribute to repression of students, of protesters, of staff. And I want to end on a final question, which is, what makes you motivated to keep on going, even though you face repression in this way?
I think for me, this motivation comes from the knowledge that it has to continue, right? Yes, we can draw some hope from like our particular case of, okay, the municipality is not as willing to do that, but that's not where hope comes from. That's a small sliver of optimism. But hope and the need and the motivation to continue comes from Palestine. It comes from looking at what Palestinians are able to push themselves through, are forced to go through, and to say, well, if I have to be beaten up twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, whatever they will throw at me, it is nothing compared to the pure violence that is made present in Palestine. And so if they can go through that, we can go through 100 more occupations and 100 more times getting beaten up by the riot police, because that is still nothing. And it is still so necessary to continue.
Yeah, for me, It's two things. One is looking at others who have sacrificed so much for the Palestinian struggle, again over decades, of course. But you look at the Hamas fighters in Gaza and what they go through and how they keep on inflicting damage despite the unbelievable conditions that they're in. You look at journalists in Gaza, you look at lots of like medics in Gaza, but then also you look at people who are resisting and sacrificing a lot in the West, like the hunger strikers, the Palestine Action hunger strikers in UK prisons right now, and so many other people who have lost their jobs and lost their livelihoods and lost their freedom. They encouraged me to keep going for sure, and they seeing that sacrifice. And then the other thing is just the moral clarity that we are on the right side here, and like it's so obvious that we're on the right side, and more people can see that. And the reason they're repressing is because they know we have the moral clarity, and they know that they can't shut us down with arguments, so they're gonna use repression. But that should hopefully embolden us to keep going, because I think most people know what the reality and what side justice is on, basically.
I'll try to add on to what both of you said, because obviously, yes, all the motivation to keep going comes from Palestinians themselves, both in Palestine, across the world, and in the Netherlands. But I also think, I truly believe from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I truly, truly believe in that. And I think it's so much easier to be on the right side of history. We don't have to do the moralizing constantly, because we know that what we're doing is right. And I can see it in the municipality. I can see every time we bring it up, they get annoyed with us. Every time they get annoyed, because they know they'll have to find a way to look themselves in the mirror again and to tell the people on the outside what they're doing. So it's so much easier to be on the right side of history, because you can just say what's right. And I think what keeps me going as well is that it is simple. It's very, very possible, very, very easy. It just depends on political choice, on academic choices, on personal choices. So I feel like I want to keep bringing it as that it's simple. Palestine will be free. And yeah, if we keep working together, it will be. So that.
Beautifully said, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hoor mijn verhaal. Deel mijn strijd. Je luistert naar Het Glazen Huis van Verzet. Van 19 tot en met 22 december vanaf het Schouwburgplein in Rotterdam. Samen komen we in verzet en halen we geld op voor de Democratische Republiek Congo, Palestina en Sudan. 3 landen verbonden door een kapot systeem. 3 bevolkingen die strijden tegen genocide en onderdrukking. Samen komen we in actie. Ga naar www.hetglazenhuisvanverzet.nl. Luister, strijd, doneer.